All right, so we're back again for a couple of reviews. Going to hit the new movie, The Sinners, that came out here in 2025. So, James, why don't you kick us off with what it was about? Maybe brief on what your thoughts were.
Well, I wasn't told anything at all about what the movie was about. And it opens up, and I'm really getting into this movie as a period piece. And it was a good period piece movie. And then all of a sudden, it does this left turn into the cornfield, and it became a vampire movie. And it still stayed a great movie. I love the music. I love the subtle, how can I say it, the meshing of history that isn't very often talked about, because the vampire antagonist was Irish, and the Irish put up with a lot of the same stuff that the blacks did and whatnot, but that's all been swept under the rug. And this movie kind of brought that out as well in a subtle way. It didn't slam it in your face, but it was there. All in all, as a period piece, as a horror movie, and as a I don't know what you call, not really a political statement, but as a movie with subtle political statement, I thought it was good across the board.
Yeah, what about you, J3?
I loved it. I actually went to see it in theaters and purchased it on pre-order the same night on Prime Video because I wanted to watch it again. Dad pointed out some of the things that I noticed immediately. Um, was all the little subtle nods to real history and just the way they interlaced it all. And I appreciate the fact that people that haven't seen it or didn't know what they're getting into when they went to watch it get, like Dad said, surprised by this left turn into what the hell? This is a horror movie. This is a fantasy, whatever you want to call it. But overall, just as far as the movie goes itself, the acting was superb. I think the dialogue was great. It's, in my opinion, an awesome ride throughout the entire thing. Um, yeah, just all in all, absolutely awesome movie in my opinion. And there's a lot we could delve into as far as breaking it down.
Yeah, good. I'm in the same boat. So I knew a little bit about this movie. I mean, I knew that it had to do with vampires and something uh, kind of in the early 1900s or so, but that was about it. And so I was kind of pleasantly surprised as well. The first hour or so was more so that period piece type thing, bootlegging, all of that. And I was waiting for when the vampire aspect was coming, and so that was a bit of a surprise. And I too really enjoyed a lot of the music, um, and I'm excited to kind of talk about some of the different aspects of the movie. So that's good. Let's hop into some of this. So I guess overall, so we've got Michael B. Jordan, who's the protagonist in this, and he's doing a dual role. He's playing twin brothers in this, and I think he does a great job. So he's playing Smoke and Stash, right?
Stack.
Stack, yeah, sorry. So Smoke and Stack are twin brothers from a town where
Clark,
what
Clarksdale, Mississippi.
Mississippi. That's what I thought. I thought they were in Mississippi. So the
And they're
background that we get is that they were soldiers at some point, probably in World War I,
World War
maybe,
One. Yep, World War One.
and they had left Mississippi and went to. I mean, they had done a lot of stuff, but they had left Mississippi at some point. And were working with the mob up in Chicago, and they stole what we got: Italian wine and
An
Irish
Irish
beer,
beer.
and they probably, it's implied that they were able to take all of that, come back down to Mississippi. They're wanting to open up their own joint and everything, but um, they kind of pinned the two different mobs against each other, and they kind of got out hopefully clean from that. I mean, it kind of fizzles out from there, but that's where we're at. So they're back in Mississippi, and yeah, and they're wanting to open this joint. So then we get Sammy, who's this young preacher boy. That's his nickname. Also, his father's a preacher and everything, and he's a great blues player. Well, he is a great blues player, and he's also an aspiring blues player,
Yeah.
and he's cousin to the twins. And anyway, they kind of link up, and most of the movie is taking place kind of telling the story over the course of the day, where they're trying to get this whole first first kickoff of their juke joint out there, right? And so I guess the first, well, I don't know, you guys tell me, what's the first thing that kind of stuck out to you, or the first plot point that hit?
More than anything, I just love the historical, what's the word, accuracy in a lot of ways. Clarksdale, Miss, well, not Clarksdale, Mississippi, but just the nod to the actual history of the thousands of black men that went to fight in World War One. Which anybody that understands World War One, that was one of the nastiest, most brutal wars you could probably imagine having to fight in. And then when they came back, a lot of them did go into the cities and work for organized crime as muscle. They had the ability to coordinate tactics, et cetera, et cetera. So just the nods, those things, those little nods, and also early on in the movie they show that there's the Asian family. I believe that they're Korean, and
The Chows,
that
they're Chinese.
yeah,
Yeah,
are they Chinese? Yeah. Well, and
yeah,
that shows that's that homage to real American or real United States history that they weren't quite white, but they weren't black. So the Chinese were kind of the intermediaries between, for white people at the time to effectively siphon out the resources within the already established black communities, which they actually mention one of the preeminent black communities from that era, which is Mountain Bayou, much akin to Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street from that era, and other places. So the only thing that really struck out to me from the beginning was that I loved the suits that the brothers had on. Absolutely loved them. The wardrobe and everything was great. The dialogue was awesome, and I felt immersed in that period of time. Was legitimately engaged in what these characters were doing and what their goal was.
yeah. So did I. I'd be curious what the budget was for this film, because it looks like it should have been pretty low budget, because of the set pieces. Right, there wasn't really a whole lot to it, and I love kind of sets like that where they're very contained and you can get a lot accomplished in that. I mean, most of it just takes place in a barn, right?
So
And
dialogue
then
driven.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And like I think everybody's mentioned here, the accuracy of it. I mean, whether it's how people dressed, which
Yeah.
kind of it was interesting to me. Kind of the first thing that came to my mind whenever I'm seeing people, whether it's the two brothers who are dressed quite well, or even the poorer folk, everybody seemed to at least take some dignity in how they dressed, as opposed to
Yeah, that's
nowadays where
about
you
it.
go to the store and there's people in their flip flops and pajama pants and stuff like that. I mean, it was just a different time. But yeah, and then again, kind of this mashing. I mean, it talks. You kind of mentioned it. So you have all the blacks, you have the Chinese, right, which also would have been seen as an underclass at the time, the railroad workers and all of the different things that they were doing. Then you also have the Irish aspect of it too later on, and so it's kind of that melding of all these oppressed classes for the time. But what was I going to say? uh, so right at the beginning of the movie, right, they're kind of introducing you to some of this stuff. I think it was at the beginning, at least, right, when they're talking about the different cultures and what they had names for whenever it came to monsters, essentially, whether it was I forget what all that they referred to them as. And I thought that was a bit interesting too. Do you have that? Do you?
Griots. Griots was the West African word. Yeah, I'm checking on that right now. You talking about the names of all the ones they say?
Yeah, I'm going to pause this. Find that of the different. All right, so yeah, at the very beginning of the movie, there is the narration as to the introduction to what did they describe them as?
They
These
spoke about three specifics. They spoke about the Irish Feely, the Choctaw or Indian Firekeepers, and the West African Griot, which were the people that had the ability through music to effectively uh, tear open the veil between the world
that's
of the
right.
living and the world of the spirits.
Correct. Okay, so making that connection, and that's a very important point within this film as a whole, right?
Ancestral
Is the
memories.
yeah, and the musical aspect to it, that plays a big role. So yeah, so the set pieces were great, particularly for the period. the introduction of everybody, I think, was really good. And we move forward. The brothers, again, they're trying to get this juke joint open, and so they go to purchase a barn, a
Old
sawmill. I think it was an old
sawmill.
sawmill, yeah, from a guy. And they get that, and that comes into play later, which we'll get to. But yeah, I guess continuing on with anything else you guys wanted to talk about that stuck out as we progress forward?
Yeah, this was something that I noticed throughout the movie. How much artwork that I would often see as a young man was portrayed in this movie. And by that, you guys got my old records. If you look on um, some of the older albums and whatnot, the Motown albums and stuff, when they depict the different dance halls and bands and whatnot, you'll see the really pretty chick in the slinky tight flapper dress, right? And you had one of those, and then you'll have the guy in the kind of baggy pants and overalls over a somewhat rumpled shirt, so he has Steven said he has some dignity in his dress, but you can tell that he's not wealthy. He's one of the poorer ones. His fedora might be a little battered up, and then you have the chubby old woman who seems to have quite a bit of wisdom and whatnot. You saw all of these in that movie. All
That's Yeah, you did. You know what? So do you guys recall when? So I guess two things happened. One, I'm starting to remember some of the notes that I had taken. Okay, so we're in town, and Smoke is trying to negotiate with the Chows to make the signs and stuff. He's talking to some of the folks, but so before they got to town, they had gone and gotten all their booze and stuff. Right, they had gotten their truck, and when they went to get the truck, there was the snake in there, right?
Yep.
It was, I don't know, maybe it was because I had foreknowledge of what the movie was about with the vampires and stuff, but maybe it was also that opening scene because I feel like that maybe they had mentioned something related to it. But anyway, I thought that might be a bit of an allegory or something to the devil, with what they were doing and what they were about to get involved with. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? I mean, it could have just been a damn snake that they shot,
No,
but to me, it's like, why? It's one
No,
of
I
those things.
agree.
I forget who said it is. If you have something in a movie or in a play, I think is what
There's
the
a reason
main thing
for it.
is. There's a reason for it.
Yeah,
And to
I
me,
know.
the
I
idea of the snake was that, yes, the endeavor in which you are about to embark on
It's about to be snake
is,
bit. That's an expression.
yeah,
We say that all the time when we get on projects that are snake bit. They're effectively cursed, and that's honestly what I got from that scene. And something else that I took away from it that I really enjoyed in this movie is the brother dynamic, um, the way in which they dispatch it. And if you remember, I'll touch on this later. Just remember at the very beginning of the cigarette when uh, Stack rolls the cigarette while
hmm
they're waiting on Hogwood to show up, the guy that they bought the sawmill from. But yeah, I agree with you most definitely. That snake was not placed there for any reason. If you remember, also it was Sammy or Preacher Boy, their cousin, that actually pulled the flap back. And if you remember, he yanked him away and said, "Don't." I can't remember verbatim what he said, but he effectively said, "Get away from that. Don't touch that." And I think that was also, a precursor or a harbinger of what was to come, i.e., the fact that while the cousins want to bring their cousin along for what purpose he serves as a blues player and to also give him some taste of freedom as they were, so vehemently espousing they were looking for with the opening of this juke joint. But while at the same time wanting to keep him away from the elements of it that they realize are unclean and would, besmirch their little cousin, as it were. They want him in,
yeah,
don't want him 100% in.
exactly. I think he even said, and it was repeated because I think he even said when the snake and they shot it or stabbed it in one eye, he said, "Let us take care of that."
Right.
And he repeats that later on
Multiple
towards
times.
the end of the movie, that this get out of here
Leave this
type of
shit to
thing.
us. Leave this here
Exactly,
shit to us.
exactly.
Go go where
This
the
is evil
proper folks
stuff.
are.
This is for us type of thing. Yeah. And the second scene that wasn't too far after that that stuck out to me and I really appreciated was the scene with the girl in town. He was going to pay
Yeah.
her to look at the truck, and he used it as a lesson for her because he's saying, "Hey, I'll give you what, $1 a minute or
And
10 cents a
10
minute,
cents back
10 cents
then.
a minute."
Yeah.
Something like that.
No, it's not.
And she immediately agreed, right? And he's teaching her how to negotiate, how to get what's your
Get your
worth,
value,
right?
or at least what you're worth.
Yeah, I loved that for so many reasons. One, because it was Smoke, right? And I mean, even at that point, which is only a few minutes into the movie, you kind of notice that he's the more no nonsense, the gruffer, the harsher type of brother, and Stack's the opposite. But it shows he's still kind of wanting what's best for other people, or at least his people,
His people.
type of thing. Yeah. So I really appreciated that too.
Something else funny from that scene, it's the dichotomy of who who Smoke is, and I think it speaks to just everybody's nature, because nobody is wholly good or wholly bad. But something I thought was great was right after that scene where he's effectively educating and helping out a member of his community, when he comes out and shoots the guy in the ass. And then after they go through all the workings of, oh, I thought she was lying, we didn't know it was you, Smoke, whatever. He shoots the other guy, just
And
because
yeah,
can't have people saying they almost robbed the Smoke twins without a
exactly.
limp to show for it. And I just thought that, all within that same scene, or that
Yeah,
same
yeah,
period of
it
scene.
conveyed a lot because that was the thing too, is that they had been gone for quite some time, many
Hmm.
years, I think 5 or 7 years, something like that.
7, I
And there
think.
was the question as to whether or not it probably is seven, which is also significant if you
Yeah,
think about it, right? 3, 7, that type of stuff in mythology and everything. Anyway, they've been gone for all those years, and the question is if anybody would even kind of remember who they were, and very clearly they did. Even this young girl who can't be much older than 7, and so yeah,
had
I
heard of
thought that
them.
was great. And it kind of conveyed, okay, this is why they probably had that reputation and why folks remembered who they were. And
And then
so
he
they're going
pays for
around.
their treatment.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so he's going around. It's kind of an assembling the team type of thing, right? They're getting everybody to help out with getting this juke joint first endeavor kickoff going. And so they go and they recruit the Chows. They're going to help with the signage, and they are also going after uh, what's his name? Delta Slim. So they're going to recruit Delta Slim, although that's Stack and Sammy who are going after Delta Slim. And let's talk a little bit kind of about about the different folks that they're picking up, our main characters here. So we've got the Chows, we've got Delta Slim, we've got, was it Omar? Or no, Cornbread, sorry, Cornbread. And then there's Mary, who we're introduced to. So these are kind of our main characters in which we're getting introduced to. You're
All right.
muted, James.
I shouldn't be
Sorry,
muted.
No,
that was
sorry,
me. He's
Dad.
talking to me.
J3. Yeah.
Go ahead, Dad.
So here's a character that did not get recruited, but I absolutely loved her. And that was Cornbread's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you recall, I can't remember, I think it was Smoke, but it might have been Stack. One of the brothers was talking to
Stack.
Cornbread and said some things that could have been quite insulting, and Cornbread did take it as an insult to his wife, particularly the blowjob comment. And before Cornbread could get himself in trouble or go down that line too far, she pipes up with, "How much you going to pay him?"
How much
So
money
Yeah.
are we
I
talking?
like the fact that she was all business too.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have time to be insulted by silly shit. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
exactly. And Delta
Well,
Slim, who they got first, was he's a great blues player.
I
Right.
think the question is, I would say great for sure in his heyday, but we meet Delta Slim as he's on that you know, the last leg, because remember what he asked him, he says, "You still good on those keys? Depends on who you ask." You know,
Hmm.
and he's that. I think he's the embodiment of the. In my opinion, for this movie, he's the embodiment of the suffering of that class at that time. You know, he's not one of the ones that went away for the war. And we know that he's a drunk. You know, he's drifted drunk, whatever. But he's a musician from that era, specifically a blues musician. I just think he was. And plus, just as a note, I love that actor.
Yeah,
Um,
me too. Delroy.
I've yeah, I've always loved that guy. I think he's Lindo, right? Delroy Lindo.
I think so. He's in. I liked him a lot in The Core. That
The
was a great
core, yep,
movie with
Gone
him.
in
And
60 Seconds when he was
yeah,
the main cop. Yeah, huge actor, and yeah, really good. His character, I liked it a lot, and I
yeah,
love how he
and
tempted him with the beer.
yeah, and that's the thing. So okay, so while they're recruiting Delta Slim, I mean, a lot happens there, right? Primarily, one of the big things that we find out is this character Mary,
Mary,
who was grew up, it would appear, with Stack and Smoke. We don't know necessarily the extent. It sounds like, there were, I think she said that their mom looked after them for a little while or something like that. Anyway, they had relations in the past. And
yeah, they
Stack,
were
I liked.
basically raised by her mother.
Yeah, and it's interesting kind of to see that dynamic, right? Because she's white. And she's married to a white man at the time, and everything, with everything that's going on, you kind of immediately see the interaction to where Stack is concerned about what
For
could
both of
happen if
their
people
safety.
perceived correct, not just hers as well. Because what you got to remember, I mean, a lot was
1932.
going on at that time. Right. And I mean, just the idea of biracial marriages or anything like that is unheard of. I mean, it wasn't until what, 1969 or something like that, with Loving v. Virginia,
Yeah, that was Love in
that,
Virginia. Yeah.
yeah. So interracial marriage wasn't allowed until around 50 years ago or so. I mean, it just wasn't a thing. So it was interesting to kind of see that dynamic. Um, and yeah, it kind of plays a role there a little bit later. So that was kind of what was happening there with Delta
Did they
and
mention
Mary during that
Wilmington in
recruitment.
this movie? I can't remember.
Wilmington, in what
Yeah,
reference?
are you familiar with the Wilmington coup?
No,
Well,
and
we
they
can
didn't
talk about
mention
that at
that.
a later date, but I could have swore they said maybe they didn't. Either way, that's a topic for a later date. But it regarding the interracial marriages and race relations in the United States prior to if it weren't for truly the white supremacist movement, I believe our country would be very different. But we can talk about the Wilmington coup at a later time. I
I
just couldn't remember if they referenced it.
I want to bring something up here. I didn't realize that it was so late in our history that interracial marriages became legal. Uh,
Yeah.
but see, I have a
1967.
different perspective from you guys because I remember, just being a little guy, and there there was so much hatred on both sides for the other races. On the other hand, there was such a huge amount of mixing of multiracial couples when I was a kid. I mean, and it really stirred the fires of the ones at the extreme. So it's weird to me that my memories of that kind of stuff is the extremes, right? It was like everybody right here is mixed interracially and hell, even gender wise a lot of times. And then you had these extremes that were just hating everybody except their own little insular group. And
Yeah, I don't know how much different that was, to be honest. I mean, I guess I had some similar experiences to that with. I got to be honest. It was more so in the black community, the militant black really hating whites and the idea of race mixing. I mean, I experienced some of it with some white folks, but for the most part, lot of black folks. Uh, the idea of, and I don't really know too much about other communities like Hispanic and Asian and stuff like that, but yeah, Loving v. Virginia, that's the one that allowed for the interracial marriage to take place. That wasn't until 1967. I mean, yeah, it
Yeah,
really was not
that
that
was when
long
it
ago.
went. Yeah, that was when it went to federal.
Now, see,
Um,
it's so weird. And I was talking just literally like yesterday to Thurston about this and how it seems like our generation had pretty much squashed this shit, right? All this,
mhm.
the racial hatred and the triggered because you heard a word. We gotten to the point where racial slurs for our generation was more of a punchline,
Yeah,
more of a
Richard
uh,
Pryor and everything. Yeah.
yeah, we no longer took cracker and nigger and heeb and kike and gook and whatever else. No one cared. They had lost their potency. And then somehow, a decade and a half later, uh, somebody revitalized it as a hate weapon.
Yeah,
And
it's all the
here
race
we are.
hustlers and stuff.
Yeah, and it's terribly sad.
All right, let's hop back on track. So we had mentioned a lot of the music stuff, and I don't know if anybody knows this. I haven't looked into it or anything, but whenever Stack and Sammy are traveling together in the car, Sammy ends up playing a little bit of music, and boy, I really like this guy's voice and his singing. I was waiting for him to sing because he's got a very deep voice. I don't know how old the guy is, pretty young, but he's got a deep voice, which I love bass type voices and everything. And he starts singing, and he does a great job singing and everything. And this is what triggers, right? This is what triggers the summoning, it would seem, of our newfound antagonist. And I've got a lot to question and ask you guys what your thoughts are on it. So,
That's my
Sammy's,
that's
yeah, go ahead.
Miles Caton. I was just gonna say the song you're asking about. That's not that actor. The singer's name is Miles Caton.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's not, he's the one who actually sings that one in the car, or is he the old
No,
guy
no,
at the
no.
end? Because those are two different voices.
Well, the Miles Caton did. I don't know how many songs for this, but he's an original artist that wrote the traveling song, and I'm sure a few more. I'd have to look and see what other songs. But that voice that does traveling, I don't know who does the one at the end. I'd have to look. But the one that does traveling is Miles Caton, is the name of that singer.
Well, yeah, that's the actor.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Miles Caton played that part? No shit.
Yeah, he's Sammy. I was gonna
Okay,
say that's
well that's
definitely
my
his
bad because
voice that's singing.
well, I never knew what Miles Caton looked like, so I just I heard the song or whatever, and I didn't realize that was him. All right, cool. I learned something.
Yeah, yeah, that's the
I only
actor.
know a few names in this one: Delroy Lindo, Michael B. Jordan, and like Jack O'Connell.
Yeah, so it seems that, and I might be getting the timeline mixed up, but in my head it's making sense the more I'm saying it, and that is, so he's singing that song and whatnot, and we get introduced around this time to our vampire, right? Or what we'll come to find out as a vampire, and that's the Irish guy, and it seems like he kind of drops from the sky, right?
Remick.
Um, Yeah, Remick, and he shows up to this white couple's house, and they pull guns on him and everything, and he notices that they got some KKK hoods in the back and all of that. And anyway, he ends up turning them, and we'll kind of revisit that. But I think
Remember
that,
the Indians showed up. Remember
Yeah,
the
the
Indians showed
Choctaws.
up, and
yeah, I
yeah,
remember the chalk. They were chasing him. They were
they were
chasing
trying
him.
to get him, and they told her they're like, "Ma'am, has a man come by here?
Well, it
He's
looked
not."
like, and
She
remember,
said,
he looked like he was burned up.
right, he was burned up because he was out in the sun and whatnot. I think they were trying to destroy him. I mean, that's the implication that's given. And then they say to it, and something else that not a lot of people notice, but I've pointed out because I've seen the movie like 3 or 4 times now. But I noticed it at the very beginning. Did anybody else notice that there were three vultures or condors, whatever, buzzards circling over top of the house whenever when the Indians approached the house?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, there's carrion birds circling over the house when the Indians show up, and they make the statement, "He is not what he seems." That's our first hint that this person or this thing is
Yeah.
not
Well,
human.
so a few things on this then. So let's focus on this for a second. So remember, what was the Choctaw word for these people, the vampires?
Hold on.
or whatever their first fire something.
Oh,
Firekeeper.
And
firekeepers were the ones that passed on the had the ancestral memories and the gift of music.
okay, so it wasn't in relation to that. Well, anyway, so you said so he's definitely burned up a little bit, his clothes, his face, and all that. Now you mentioned that you think it might be because they were chasing him and maybe got burned by the sun and stuff, which it very well could be. But at the end of the movie, spoiler, the vampires get killed by the sun. Now the main vampire here, Remick, takes him a while to burn, but he doesn't burn to ash like the other ones show. He spirals up into the air, which to me conveyed that he's probably not dead, and that at some point maybe it was the music that summoned him and brought him back down, and that's why he was burned at that time. Kind of the same way he had left. Maybe that's how he was introduced. I mean, I could be completely wrong, but it was interesting that he went more into a fire tornado up into the sky, and he was kind of introduced that not that same way, but introduced from the sky onto the ground, or at least I think that he had kind of fallen to the ground, something like that.
All right, so
Uh,
perhaps he was a demon of sorts, and the creatures that he created from humans would be what we called vampires.
yeah, because remember too, he's been around for a long time. He mentions the famine and things like that, or sorry, not the famine. He mentions religion whenever
The Lord's
Christianity was
Prayer.
first
He's like,
introduced.
and I
Yeah,
remember
so
that gives you the nod at how old he is.
exactly, and the idea that he would have died like this tells me he's probably not dead. He's probably died, quote unquote, many times throughout his history, and yeah, because I him
Maybe, but if
surviving
you
that
remember
long
the,
and this being how
but
easily he gets taken out.
remember that the narrator at the end makes the statement that unlike griots, unlike hates, the maker can be destroyed while the progeny continues on.
Yeah,
And
but he is
my only
destroyed for
my
the
only
time
take
being.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's always the possibility he could come back, but I like to stick to the traditional vampire ethos that once destroyed is gone. In my opinion, I think the whole whipped into a frenzy thing. I think that's more just in my opinion. I just think it's a visual representation of the age, the ancient
Right.
nature of this thing that like it doesn't part of me is like because he swirls away and goes away, whether that's supernatural, it's all supernatural, but whether that's because his soul's being ripped up, whatever the case may be, it's just to me a visual representation of there's something significant about this one. It's so much older that there's no longer any physical body to be left behind. It's just this ancient being that when it finally meets that end, it's complete and total. It's utter. Just
Yeah, see, I agree with that. I think that's what it was trying to convey to a sense. But I also like the idea that no, there are some of them
that can live
that
on, right? I like it.
correct. That's why the world isn't overrun with vampires, because they, a lot of them get turned and
But
they
then they
get killed,
die.
and even the old ones get killed, but they're able to come back and try and get that process started again, and that's why there's always some.
Yeah, I
But
like the concept, and then like you said, the fact that because he does say, "Sammy, I mean, you're the reason I came. You brought me here."
right. Right.
So
So
I
he
like
like
the concept.
where's he summoned from or anything. So yeah, I want to we'll revisit some of that too. But I don't know. It was interesting to me. A lot of the more we're
I
talking about it, there's a lot of different things that happen in the movie that are connected
Yeah,
together,
for
which I
sure.
think it's good. That's good writing, really good storytelling, and the fact that they don't really answer everything is so
Yeah,
great because then we can have
it's awesome.
discussions, right?
Yeah.
And okay, so well, where do we want to go next?
Well, I mean, I guess kind of the segue that we're looking for is we know what happened as far as they got together. Something we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about the fact that at this point, once we've gotten to the juke joint being open, prior to that, another very significant thing is that we meet what's her name? Smoke's significant other.
Yes. Yeah.
Smokes they had a child together who passed away, and
Beatrice.
I think that's it. Yeah, and they make reference. He makes specific reference to her juju and the why didn't her roots, i.e., casting spells or what have you from their traditional ancestral religion, why didn't that save their child? And he calls into question her power or that ancestral um, power. And if you remember, she comes for him and basically says, "What? How do you know that every single day I didn't pray for you and your crazy brother and keep you safe and bring you back here alive?" And you find out that he actually is wearing a juju bag, this
Mm-hmm.
talisman, this charm, to look over him and protect him. And but that's just that's somewhere where we find out one of the reasons why Smoke may be the way he is on top of their childhood and the abusive drunken father and that whole thing. So I think it adds yet another layer to this character of, yeah, he's hard, he's gruff. We saw that moment of kindness and education with the little girl. Well, now we see one of the reasons why this person may be so disillusioned, with the world. He's seen war, he's seen death in all manners, and then the one person beside his brother and her that he loves dies, and it's his child. So that's a really poignant part to learn about Smoke in this movie.
Yeah, well, and Beatrice is an exceptionally important character. She's
Very.
the one who narrates at the beginning of the movie, first of all, and because she's the one that has the wisdom and knowledge about these creatures and about this
Yeah.
type of stuff,
And all
right?
the
So yeah,
ancestral memories. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. So she's an important character, and so we get all the characters gathered up, and we're working on getting this hootenanny kicked
The juke
off.
joint.
Yeah. And so let's talk about that. So most of the movie, or at least most of the second half of the movie, second and third half, or second and third parts, they take place here at the sawmill in which they bought. They get the juke going. I gotta say, again, kind of thinking about accuracy, one of the other big things that stuck out to me was when it's immediate when they're getting everything ready and they're cooking the food. They're doing the frying, like fried chicken and other types of fried food, in cast iron pots
Cast iron.
with
Yep.
with all the oil and stuff. It was very, again, it's probably most people wouldn't care, pick up on it, whatever, but it was like accurate to that.
It
Like, well,
means
how did
something.
you fry chicken without fryers like we have nowadays, type of thing? It was these
Yeah.
giant, yeah. Anyway, it stuck out to me a lot. But we're here at the juke joint, and yeah, things are going. So we get cornbread at the door to be letting folks in. People start showing up. We got Delta Slim playing there and keeping the music going, and I'll open it up.
Everything's going swimmingly. It's a great night. They're having
One
a good
of
time. But
the
one of the big problems is that they are in a plantation area where sharecropping is the common means of subsistence and the living style for most of these people that live down there. So when they get there, one of the big things we see very early on is that the business endeavor is not going to the likings of Smoke because Stack and Beatrice and everybody else is there to give everyone a good time, whereas Smoke is there to take care of business and earn money, especially given the fact that their supply at this time is finite, given what we find out later on in the movie regarding how they acquired that stuff.
Yeah, and you mentioned most people are sharecroppers, and it reminded me of coal mining, right? So most people have
Company
basically
script.
script, right? So it's not cash that you can go and spend somewhere else. It's, hey, it's like a gift card that's only good at
Or
this store.
And remember, right before we get there, there's the scene between Beatrice and Smoke, where the little girl comes to purchase whatever root or medicine it was,
Mm-hmm.
and she gives her the plantation, whatever form of script this is, and he takes it from her. He's like, "What you gonna do? Why are you taking this? This isn't real money. This won't spend anywhere." And she says, "I'm not going anywhere. I don't need your money." So, yeah,
All
yeah, they
right.
they
So
they live very different lifestyles and have very different perspectives on life.
Mm-hmm.
having grown up quite literally in, well, above a bar, in the bar, and around those kind of establishments, uh, I think that what Stack did was very well played. Remember the old guy who didn't have quite enough money to pay for stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and they took his script money and whatnot, and he was saying, tonight, special night tonight, you got to give everyone a good time,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and that's what that's about. Because I know that we'd usually have like 4 events throughout the year. In the spring, we'd have corn, right? And then at some point you would have a barbecue. Then Christmas time we'd have the shrimp and the oysters and all this. And the people who came in that could pay, they pay. I mean, everyone paid to a degree, but often you got a lot more than you paid for that particular night. Because the rest of the year, when you did have money to spend, where were you going to go? You're going to go where they
Exactly.
treated you most, you know? And there's also, you know, other favors that you may need throughout the community. And now you've just fostered that goodwill and, you know, gotten, you know, I won't say an obligation, but certainly most people would feel a certain obligation to be nice back to you.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot of that throughout this movie that isn't necessarily conducive to the plot, maybe, but it tells you it's character development, and it's also a lot of, I mean, just really good life lessons, and that being one of them, right? Yeah, we're just opening this. If you turn people off from wanting to, if you want your business to be successful long term, it's got to be more than just about this night. And so this night, make everybody enjoy themselves, right? So that they have that memory and they keep coming back and can spend that money at that point. So yeah, that was well played. And again, kind of showing that dynamic between the brothers and everything. And we also get introduced here to Pearline, who is a very attractive woman that Sammy ends up kind of falling in love with. In fact, I
Remember, we
think
first
he
met
had, yeah,
Pearline at the train
at the
station.
train station where Delta and Mary were introduced, and Sammy basically had invited her out, let her know what was going on, and she showed up without her husband, might I add, and she becomes you know, a character to be thinking about too. So everybody's having a good time. Cornbread's you know, he's the doorman, which is an important part in this series, right? He's letting the people in, making sure that they belong, holding the peace, all that type of stuff. And ultimately, what we get Remick, the vampire, along with the couple that he had turned, the two KKK members he had turned. They show up hoping to gain entrance into this fine establishment, and you know, they're asking if they can come in. They're pretending to be uh, musicians themselves. They even play music, and they play quite well. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Unless there was something else going on during this time that y'all had.
No, no, that's fine. But we we talk about the music, and this is a very, very important part of this movie whenever it comes to the music and the message that it's trying to put across. We've already spoken about the whole correlation between Irish Americans, African Americans, Black Americans, however you're going to put it, and the American experience or the United Statesian experience for those peoples. And if we remember, when they get there and they don't immediately let them in, they ask them what they do. They say they're a singing troupe. We do songs. Ava asked me when we watched it, what's the significance of that song? If you remember, they
Oh
did
yeah,
Pick Will
picking the
Robin Clean.
yeah.
And why it's significant that a lot of people may miss out on is that it's this hokey rendition of a traditionally black ragtime era song,
And
right?
poor as hell, man.
Right, right, and it's literally a black song that these white people are doing this hokey, folky, Appalachian slash whatever rendition. And also, it's interesting what instrument is the primary instrument for this band? A banjo, a West African instrument. So I just thought that that was a really, really significant point in the film because what it's saying is it's, you know, I hate to say it's talking to a misappropriation of culture because that's not what it is. I think what it's illustrating is that all people utilize cultural affects or cultural points of um, poignancy, for lack of a better word, or points of critical importance in cultures, and that's, you know, music and food, but how they adopt a different culture's music to try to be accepted. That was their way of trying to get in. And whether the director was trying to say, you know, send a message as that that's what whites have done, you know, the whole Elvis stole black music and all that stuff, that's a whole different argument and conversation. But I just really thought that that was a cool way of showing them trying to appropriate themselves or excuse me, endear themselves by pulling on that music instead of playing what would I think they would have had a better chance of getting in if they would have played something white, is what I'm saying. I think that was one of those
I,
things where, because if you remember, a couple of them started bopping. A few of them started bopping to it. Stack was one of them.
Yeah.
And obviously part of it's the allure of a vampire. All I was pointing out is that a lot of people might not know that's a traditionally black song from that era. Is developed by black artists and sung by black people, and then these white vampires, two of whom are KKK members before they returned, are trying to use this song to get into this black juke joint.
Hmm.
yeah, the primary vampire, though, or demon, whatever, is
Remick.
very Celtic, Gaelic, Irish, whatever you want
Yeah, we
in
find out he's
his
Mexican.
background. And I think that shows a lot of the shared aspect of those cultures, which are not
Well,
readily taught
that's
nowadays.
yeah, for sure. That's what I'm saying. That's all. That's also the part of it. I think for the character itself, that may have been Remick's. Well, I don't think we can't act like he's magnanimous, but yeah, for the movie's message, that may have also been a tie-in of this is that crossover. This is that Irish guy saying, like you said, same story, dude, different cover, same book.
Well, exactly. It's probably what called him. Remember, it's the idea. Remember, the main
Yeah, it was
point of
the
the
music
movie is the music, and so he's saying
that tears
Sammy.
the veil.
Sammy summoned him basically. Well, what type of music is Sammy playing? Sammy's playing blues music. Well, what is blues music? It's depressed, oppressed, struggle music,
Well, just
right?
remember, he's a griot, and griots, just like firekeepers and Feely, that's what makes them so dangerous and appealing to these demons or vampires, whatever we want to call them, is the fact that they have those ancestral memories, even though they may not realize it. And Sammy, being preacher boy, his dad was a preacher. I assume his dad was probably a preacher of some, you know what I mean? And if you remember right, Beatrice tells Michael B. Jordan later on after things happen. I don't want to jump ahead too far, but she tells him after they confront and find out they realize what Remick is. She's like, if I get got, you've got to kill me because you can't let him know what I know. He can't have this power.
Yeah. Well, what I was getting at is that I think the reason that it calls to Remick is again looking at the class struggle, right? So he would have been called to this blues type of music too, because his class would have experienced very similar types of things. That's all that I was getting to. Now, yeah, as far as kind of what song that they had picked and how they played it, I don't know if they were trying to endear themselves and get in that way. Where playing blues. I mean, if it's a blues joint, you'd think that the folks would want to hear blues music. Therefore, well, play blues music. I don't know, but they were ultimately turned away. Told to get out of there, and they did. It was an interesting scene, and I believe Stack and Mary had the discussion to try and figure out, where they were, what money they had, what were they trying to figure out?
Whether or not they were basically clan people looking to cause trouble.
That's right, that's right. And so Mary ends up volunteering to go out, and she does. She confronts them, and they're still out there. They're playing another song, and Remick gives her some gold coins, and she ultimately he begins to you see his eyes change a little bit. He begins to make a move like he's going to attack her, and she jumps up, points the gun, starts to go back into the barn, and what we see is that he looks like he's about to attack her right before they shift back over to the barn, right? And there's a bunch of stuff kind of going on in between here, um, which I don't remember everything. Do you guys recall? So one of the
Well,
things that's going on kind of at this time is Pearline and Sammy end up hooking up,
yeah, they have
right?
sex.
They end up having sex there in the back room. Smokes dealing with some stuff as well. There's or not a gambler, sorry, a gambler. They're playing dice, I believe, and a gambler is oh no, that's not until later. Sorry. Okay,
Well,
so
remember, Pearline and Sammy have sex right after he plays the music, and there's that really significant scene where we see a kind of a vision of what Remick sees when they're playing the music. Because remember, he
That
sees everything burning
transition.
down, and I
Yeah.
think that's to signify because the theme throughout the movie is we're all sinners. There's this overarching theme of like we all have our skeletons in the closet. Between all the characters, they all have their own individual things that they hold or have to keep contend with, whatever. But it was during Sammy's rendition, and that's what shows that scene's really significant. And I really enjoyed it and appreciated it. Dad spoke a
It,
little bit about it later with the flapper dancer, but you see Bootsy Collins from the 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, shit, Bootsy Collins is still up, but you see all the different eras. The ancient with the masks and the tribal dancers with the frame drums and things like that. So that's where it's showing that Sammy has the ability to split the veil, and that's what truly draws. Like that's where Remick gets him pinpointed, and it's
yeah.
right and at that point is where you get to them showing up at the door, and after they show up at the door and Mary and them go out, I think right after that it's Cornbread that goes out because Mary comes back to the door and says, "Well, are you going to get out of my way and let me in?" Yeah, the
I thought
spirit
that
world.
yeah, I thought they did a decent job with that. I gotta be honest though, you know what it really conveyed to me is the downfall of music,
Yeah, for
particularly
sure.
black music and stuff. I mean, it turned into just this twerking BS rap DJ crap that I'm not a fan of most of it. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of rap that I like and stuff like that, but I don't know. To me it was such a juxtaposition of the culture change from
Yeah.
this time again, kind of talking about the dress. People took pride in kind of how they looked, whether you were poor or not. I mean, you tried
Hey,
to
you wore your
look
best
pretty
pink clothes when
decent.
you went out.
Yeah, you had respect, both for yourself and for others. And I don't know, it was interesting kind of seeing that. Now, I don't know if that was intentional, if or if they were more so didn't even think about. I don't know, but for me, when I saw it, I was like, what a shame. Honestly,
Yeah,
that's like
for
what I was
sure.
thinking is what a shame.
I
So,
agree entirely, and I'm not speaking just for the black community. I'm speaking across the board.
oh
With
yeah.
because you brought it up, people just going out in their pajamas and flip flops and what have you, and
And
I personally appreciate.
didn't that montage end with the record scratching?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there was,
Yeah,
I think so, but there was definitely a DJ in there. Yeah.
yeah, a friend
yeah,
of
and it's
mine that actually got her music degree was was talking. She said, "I never thought I would get to the point where I'm complaining about the younger generation." Said, "But you can get your music degree now and have it based in record scratching, so you never have to learn to play an instrument. You never have to master any real skill. You just
well,
got
I
to be
wouldn't
able to
say
move your
that.
hand back and
I
forth
don't
quickly to get."
know. No, I would not agree with that assessment. I would say I don't agree that there should be a fucking degree in it. But to make the assertion that you don't have to develop a real skill to be a true record scratcher, I mean, these were people. You got to look to some of the progenitors of that art, and it quite literally is an art and a skill. It's much more than just scratching individual records. There's mixing, there's fading, there's jumping between decks, sampling, cut sections, etc., etc. There's a lot that goes into that. That's why producers got paid a lot of money back then.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just because I don't like it doesn't mean that it's not a difficult thing to do.
Well, not only that, but
You've gotten
they
all
could
this.
have done it in a but they could have done it in a better way. Now, had they sampled like some old school hip hop, like I said, some of the progenitors and things like that, that in my opinion, while it may not be actual instrumentation by played instruments, it is instrumentation in as much as they've put together synthesized pieces that they've produced, these beats and what have you. At least then you're showing something that still had a semblance of art rather than this mumble mouth drug induced bullshit that's out there now.
Well, maybe that's what they were trying to convey, though, right? I really don't know. Again, to
Fair
me,
assessment.
it was very immediate of like what a downfall of good music, of
Well, we
pride,
can.
of all of
Did you
that, dignity,
did
and
you
everything
stay
else.
long enough to see the very end of the movie? Because we can actually
Yeah, I
touch on this
did.
at the
We'll
very
we'll
end.
get to that.
Because I
Yeah,
think that touches to your point regarding that. So I think that would support it.
that's where I
Well,
was
see,
really
I've always
hoping.
thought that our music is heading to shit. Okay.
think
I
anybody that
mean, if you
appreciates
look back, people used to play an instrument and they used to have to practice their voice and all that. And then as you came along, it was more and more synthetic music and it was more and more pre programmed this or that. And then, it's electronic. And now they've got that auto tone so that if you can't sing for shit, you just scream into the mic and then it lines you up with whatever notes or whatever. See, I'm not musical enough to play much more than the radio, but I do know that the skill and ability of your average musician, particularly, the ones that are getting big bucks, has gone downhill. And, look back at like Harry Belafonte, look back at uh, the Pointer Sisters, the Commodores, the or hell, go back to the 50s. What is the Delmonts or whatever? Again, that was before my time, but those guys could play instruments. They could. I got to see BB King. That man could sing. He could play. And now I don't care what genre you're talking about. It's all kind of gone to hell.
No, there's a lot of good
there's still a lot of
musicians,
out there.
instrumentation, and singers and stuff. Now they are not mainstream. So
Yeah, you
pop
just have to
culture,
find
I
them.
agree, it's a lot of crap, but that's because it's manufactured. I mean, the music industry in and of itself became this corporate manufacturing machine. And we can talk about all that at a different time because I agree. But kind of getting back on track, one thing I was hoping for actually was during that whole Veil process. I was hoping to see some John Lee Hooker in there, and most people would be familiar with a lot of his work, particularly the song "Boom Boom." But he was a blues player that was born around that time. I think he's dead now. I think he died a few years ago, but he was a sharecropper. He was a blues musician, all of that. So he really fit in there. But I didn't see him in that. But anyway, so we get introduced to Sammy singing and everything, and that kind of gets Pearline hot and bothered. They end up going and having sex, and kind of during this whole time, Mary comes back and she asks Cornbread if he'd get out of her way and invite her in so that she can do her thing. Right now we know that she was attacked by the vampires, most likely. That's why she's asking permission to get in. He obviously lets her in, and now we have a vampire inside the barn, right? And Cornbread asks Delta if he can watch the door while he goes off to the restroom there in the woods. And Mary makes a move on Stack, and they end up going to the back room and having sex there, right? And during that
No, I think
time,
no. Didn't she make a move on Smoke?
no,
No,
on Stack,
no, she
Are
went to
you
stack.
sure?
yes,
Yes,
Because it's Stack that survived.
no, Smoke survived. Or sorry, yes, Stack
yes,
survived
stack
because
survives, but
Stack got
he
attacked by
survives when he
Mary.
gets turned.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it was. So she turned the guy that she had
she
sex with.
turned Stack,
Yeah,
correct, not
stack.
Smoke. You're explaining yourself out of your own
Oh, that's
position.
right. Yeah. Okay. Duh. All right. Sorry. Stupid moment.
Yeah, no. So okay,
That happened.
so Mary seduces Stack, makes her moves on him. They go into the back room and have sex. And at this time, there's a gambling game going on. They're playing dice, I think. And anyway, yeah, they're playing dice because the guy accuses them of having loaded dice, and the guy that got accused ended up slashing them. Smoke comes to handle the situation. Sammy's with them, and the guy who made the accusation got slashed real bad across his face. And Sammy's told to go get Stack, right? Sammy goes to get Stack and sees that they're having sex, come back, tell Smoke, he's indisposed, not bothering him. Smoke goes to get Stack at that point, and they see that Stack's been attacked. Mary's on top of him, eating him, biting
Eating
him,
out
all
his
that type of
neck.
stuff. There's blood and everything, right? And so this is where we first see, or everybody's first introduced really to the vampire aspect. Smoke, I love it. He immediately starts blasting the hell out of Mary, right? Both guns out,
The
shooting her. Thinking she's dead, she hops up, runs out of the place. Okay, and this is kind of what's going on now. And anyway, kind of transitioning a little bit. They're asking Delta, who's standing at the door, where's Cornbread? He was supposed to be watching the door. All this, which I didn't really know why they were giving him so much shit as to why, like, Cornbread, how would this have changed anything that was going on? I mean, Mary
It
was
wouldn't have.
there. Yeah, exactly. So that
I
was a
think it
bit
was mostly.
strange.
I don't think it was strange. I think that was just speaking to Stack's, or predominantly Smoke's, but both Smoke and Stack's military experience, and just the fact that, especially Smoke, he wanted, I put you at a post, was basically the
Yeah, I think it
iteration
was
there.
more so of like looking, yeah, being in that place. I mean, my brother's dead. I want somebody to blame what the hell happened. So I think
Right.
if he was looking at it logically, but in the moment he wasn't so much.
And remember, he'd
And
already seen him there. He's like, "Where the hell's Cornbread?" He's like, "I don't know. Probably building you a new outhouse. How long you been gone?" He's like, and
yeah.
he got you at the door. He says, "What? You think I can't handle it?"
hmm And
And
so at this time when they're dealing with Stack being dead and everything, the party gets shut down, they kick everybody out, all of that. The only people really left inside now are the Chows, Beatrice, Pearline, Sammy, and Smoke. Well, and Delta, right? And the dead body of Stack. And there's
remember,
some
hold on. Remember, they find the one poor bastard that they think has been bitten because he's laying
well,
in
it's a
the
little
puddle.
bit later, yeah. It's a little bit
Yeah.
later because I want to come back to that too. But
Okay.
uh, so they're all in there, and I don't remember the exact sequence of events, but ultimately Beatrice, recognized that something's up, right? You put all these bullets into Mary. She got up like it was nothing left. She makes the recommendation to Smoke that they should take Stack's body out of the building because she feels like something's up, and Cornbread at this point comes back to his post, right, saying that he was just out taking a leak. Smoke's asking where he's been. Uh, Cornbread's, hey, why don't you invite me in, get out of my way, type of thing. And that's really is what tips Beatrice off, right? Telling Smoke, don't invite him in. Now she's thinking that they're haints, which are Southern ghosts, something along those lines. I'm not familiar super with that lore, but anyway, come to find out that they're vampires, right? And anyway, she kind of helps them on the right track that we can't be inviting these folks in.
Yeah, it was after Delta Slim told her what Mary had said before she ran out.
Yeah, we
She
said
said
we are
she said,
gonna.
"We're gonna kill you all," and she said, "You
Yeah.
said." She said, "We," and that's when she got on. And then I can't remember who it was she hit with the garlic water, but that's when it like 100% confirmed it. She hit him with
Oh,
pickled
that was
garlic.
Stack. That was Stack. Yeah,
That's
that's what
right.
caused
When he
Stack
broke
to
through
run out.
when he broke through the door. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So they don't invite Cornbread in. They shut the door, and then they start hearing Stack, trying to get out of the room and everything. And anyway, he ends up busting out. That's when Beatrice throws the garlic water on him, and he runs out of the building now. So all the vampires are out of the building. Then they come across what they think's a dead body. It was, the gambler that I think it was the gambler who got the crap beat out of him. Or it was some guy got the crap beat out of him. There's a pool of what looks to be blood on the ground. They, drag him out because they don't want him turning while he's inside, right? And sucks for him because it turned out to just be some wine that was on the ground, right? And right before he can get in, he gets taken out by Cornbread.
Cornbread. And remember, Cornbread almost got smoked.
Yeah, he did. Cornbread's face, got blown off there by Smoke. I
And
mean,
that
there's
was
a
a really dope scene. Like from a horror movie perspective,
yeah.
I've always liked that actor, like just as a stand-in character, as a piece. Like I don't remember him in anything where he held a
He's
lot of
in
crap across.
he's in The Last Castle, which is a phenomenal movie. But he plays or at least I'm pretty sure.
Is that him in the last
I
cast?
could be thinking of somebody else now. I'm thinking about it actually. I think was he in the what's that football movie?
Which football movie?
The one with Denzel Washington, the high school kids.
Oh, you're talking about Remember the Titans.
Yeah, remember was he in that?
Not that I recall.
Dude, I
He may
swear
be.
he's in The Last Castle because he's the one who he's in 8 Mile, yeah. I
Yeah,
swear
he
he's
is
the
an
one
8 Mile.
that he's the one that him and the little Mexican dude are always getting into it. When did that come out? God.
Yeah, you talking about the one with James Gandolfini, right?
Yeah.
And Robert Redford. Yeah.
Oh, maybe he's not. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. Doesn't matter. All right, getting back on track.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff was going on there. I mean, basically everything that's happening, right? All the people who got kicked out of the party, come to find out, they all got turned into vampires. Okay, and so now they're with Remick. You've got the small group now inside, hoping to survive the night, so to speak. Except Chow, the wife, is still inside because Bo, her husband, had outside to get the car so that they could leave. Right? They've got their daughter back at the shop, and when Cornbread ended up attacking the drunk guy that was outside, he basically tells his wife that if you don't come out, we're going to go out. And this is where we learn a whole lot of stuff, right? One of the big things that we learn is that all the vampires are connected, all the memories now, right? Everybody knows everything else
About everybody else.
about everybody, right? And they make the plea here. There's a lot you could look into, but they ultimately make the plea, Stack making the plea to Smoke that, hey, this is what would be best for our people. Um,
Yeah, we could build a
just
new world. We could build a new world. Was
yeah,
basically the conception that Remick was putting in, and basically the thought of not only building our own world, but in the process we get the vengeance we desire on those we seek, and bring into the coven those that we choose. You know what I mean? The ultimate revenge and salvation. The
yeah.
ultimate freedom was kind of what it was posited as by Remick. And I mean, if the supernatural world is real, don't get me wrong, vampire couldn't be the worst way to go. Me personally, I wouldn't miss the sun and things like that, but hey, I can work at night. I'm a night out by nature.
Well, it's interesting because something very important is said at this juncture that both happened earlier in the movie and later takes place even later in the movie. And that is, now that they've got the memories of everybody, Stack conveys to his brother Smoke that, hey, these two honkies here that were playing, they're KKK members. Not only that, they are related to the guy who sold us the sawmill, right?
Yes,
And he's the Grand
he's the
Dragon.
Grand Dragon of the KKK.
And what this is not a sawmill, it's a killing floor. And,
Remember at the beginning, he asked him why the floors were so cleaned. He
yeah,
said, "Y'all clean these floors, and it's a sawmill. There should be sawdust, etc., etc." Why was it that? Yeah, and that would may have been another harbinger that most people didn't catch.
yeah.
You
And
clean floors in
so,
slaughterhouses. You don't clean
and
floors in sawmills.
exactly, and this is important for a few reasons, both related to the movie, but it's also significant in the idea that he's trying to convey that, man, see, even when we were trying to do better, trying to make something, it would have been ruined because all
Yeah,
they were going to do was kill us anyway. So why don't we just create our own new world, right?
yeah.
Just come into the fold, and that's what we learned. Fortunately, he turns them down basically. Now Chow, Bo, she's very much worried about her daughter because they make the
Lisa.
threat that they're going, if you don't let us in, we are
I'm gonna
going
go
to,
pay a
go
visit
get
to
your daughter.
Lisa. Excuse
Yeah.
me.
So, and that's important because ultimately what happens, right, is Lisa invites them in. Now,
Yeah, because
what's
he's speaking about that, and she gets to the point of rage after he speaks to her in their native tongue, and
yeah.
yeah, she freaks out and says, "Come in, you
Yeah,
mother effers."
So
I
I
don't
will.
think the scene with Lisa was real, though. I don't
Wait,
think that they actually went to town and got Lisa. I think that they just
they
put that.
didn't.
They didn't.
Who
Yeah,
said
they
they
just
did?
put that in their head. Okay.
Yeah, he said he just said he's gonna go pay
No.
her a visit.
Wait, what are you talking about? What did they put in her head? They just said it. They didn't
Yeah,
show
the
anything
the
about Lisa.
idea that they were going to go get Lisa.
Oh yeah, they
But,
said it though. They didn't.
yeah, but then the movie flashed and it
Yeah,
showed
it
the mom
shows her in the
imagining
window.
Lisa at the door.
Yeah, it shows her at the door in the mom's
Remember?
mind's eye. It's the mom's
Oh,
mind. It's
I
just the
must
Yeah,
have
it's the
missed
mom.
that.
mom's mind. It
It's the
didn't
mom's mind's
actually
eye.
happen, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's fine. Um, Oh, so a bit of an inconsistency that I feel like was playing out in the movie, and I could be wrong, but so both vampire lore plus a little bit of an inconsistency in the movie is who's allowed to invite somebody in, and it should be the owner, right? And this is why it
Yeah.
was so important that Smoke and Stack were the ones essentially that were inviting in, right? Now, Mary obviously was let in by Cornbread.
And he was
Although
given
Cornbread
permission
was
by the
given
owner.
permission, correct.
Yeah.
So the idea, and this was a big thing, right? Because even whenever other people were talking and stuff, or Delta was interrupting Stack talking, right? And Stack, told him to shut up. I'm talking to my brother because they need the permission from the owner to get in, right? And actually, in some of the other scenes, you even ask who's the owner of this establishment, that type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
all of that because they need permission from that person. So to me, the fact that the mom, the wife Chow, was able to invite all of them in was inconsistent for me and it didn't make any sense. That should not have happened even if she yelled for them to come in because she didn't have permission. She wasn't the owner of this. So I thought that was a bit of a plot hole there.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
But anyway, they get a little bit prepared and
I didn't honestly think about that, but that's a very good point because I do agree that it is supposed to be the owner. But
Yeah,
well,
I
yeah,
was
and
just
they made reference to it multiple times in the movie. So had they not really referenced it, I maybe could have
it
forgiven
wouldn't
it.
have
But
mattered. But right, they made
they
reference
showed
to
it
it.
at least three
Fair enough.
times. They
It's
kind
good
of
enough.
referenced
It's
it.
good enough that it doesn't bother me. It's
Yeah,
good enough movie. It doesn't bother me. But yeah, good catch because I hadn't actually thought about that. But that's a very good point now that I think about it.
you're gonna say something?
I was just going to say that now that you've mentioned it, I agree. But no, I hadn't even thought about that myself.
Yeah, it's a good point. Very good.
So they're all kind of getting prepped, getting ready. And Lisa, or not Lisa, what's the mom's name? Doesn't matter. Wife Chow. She yells and basically invites them all in. Now, prior to that, again, a great music scene, right? Was all of them out there dancing and
Grace.
singing. Grace is the mother's name. Yeah. So all the vampires are out there singing, right? Singing all the music, and they're singing. Uh, oh, what is it? In the merry month of May.
Talk about Wild Mountain Time.
No. The Irish
Oh,
song.
the jig. Yeah. Well, Irish. Wild Mountain Time's an Irish song too.
Yeah, that's not what it is though. It's very
Hold
in the
on.
merry
Yeah, I
month
can't
of
remember.
May. Rocky Road to Dublin. So they're all
That's
out
it.
there.
Yeah, Rocky Road to Dublin.
So all the vampires are out there. They're singing the Rocky Road to Dublin, which I like that they played so much of that
So
song
much
because
good stuff
it
here.
sounded really good and I liked the dancing and everything and it was very cool just to hear and listen and see that and everything and they're out there singing. Everybody else is inside kind of preparing for an invasion and whatnot. They get invited in and and chaos ensues, right? Now, to be honest, the way in which it was portrayed, it seemed like they all should have been wiped out pretty quick. I mean, what, there were 5 people in there, something like that?
Let's
Um,
see. Let's count it out. You had Delta Slim, Sammy, Smoke, Grace,
Beatrice
Beatrice,
and Pearline.
and Pearline. So 6. Yeah.
Yeah, 6 people, right?
Not many.
Yeah. Now they had fashioned some steaks. There was a couple of guns, and there was some garlic and whatnot. And anyway, a lot of fighting's going on. What do we see? We see Mary and Stack are able to escape. For whatever reason, they ran out. Um, a whole lot of the congregants were killed, but not even close to all of them. They did come to find out that if you hurt Remick, it kind of hurts all of them. And Smoke ends up fighting Stack a little bit later in the upper bounds of the barn or of the sawmill, and Delta is telling who Pearline and Sammy to get out of there, right? I think it was both of them. Now, at some point, Pearline ends up getting bitten, I believe, right?
Mhm.
She get bitten or just killed in some way? Because
Which one? Beatrice?
no, Pearline, because she tells.
Oh,
So you're right. Well, before that, yeah, Beatrice ends up getting turned. She ends up getting bit at least, and
yeah,
she has Smoke kill her because he had promised, right?
and
And
Grace.
that's
Yeah,
actually. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say Grace gets killed out the gate. Beatrice takes a couple of them and then winds up getting got by Remick, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
Was it Remick? Yeah, and then somebody takes on Remick to get him off of her, wherein Smoke comes and does his duty, albeit the heaviest burden.
Yeah, so Smoke ends up killing Beatrice, staking her to make sure she doesn't turn and come back as promised. And that's kind of the scene
And
that.
it robs Remick of the memories that she has in her power.
Yeah, and it kind of turns the tide for whatever reason. I'd have to rewatch to be honest to maybe make a reason as to why. But anyway, that's whenever we see Stack and Mary kind of leave the sawmill, and Remick's obviously very upset, and Delta he had made the comment many times up to this point that I'm old, whatever, this is kind of the last thing, I'll go out fighting and I'll protect all these people if I need to. And so he shuffles Sammy and Perline out, I believe, and he's kind of, and anybody else that was left, he's kind of making the last stand, holding people off as others can escape, basically stay alive, run until at least the sun comes up. Now, Perline at some point gets bit or something like that, and she tells Sammy to leave, and Sammy runs. He kind of jumps off the top area of the barn and escapes, but Remick's not too far behind, and so Remick and the rest of the vamps that are alive are now going after Sammy, and Sammy's he's got his guitar. He's escaping into the water, and this is where there's a showdown between he and Remick. At the same time, Stack and Smoke are fighting up in the barn area, and it looks like Smoke gets the best of Stack, and even though he doesn't want to, he's going to stake his brother, and that's kind of where we leave that scene, and we kick back over to Sammy, and Sammy ends up busting the guitar up against Remick's head, right, and honestly, I thought that maybe that disc that was on the guitar was silver or something, and that is what caused all the pain and why it was such a problem. Although it doesn't appear that it was silver, but it definitely caused a lot of damage. Or maybe it was, I don't know, and he was able to pull it
Most
out because
most
Remick's face was
probably.
all messed up.
Yeah, I think that just speaks to he got because remember he had been throughout that entire battle. He'd been beaten up throughout the battle. I mean, he'd taken some
Yeah,
shots. I think honestly, it just speaks to he took a mean shot from a steel resonator. That's the type of guitar that is, and that
yeah.
resonator just I think it because it delved so deep into his head. I think even if he's an ancient creature, it's not gonna kill him, but it damn sure messed his mojo up.
Well, and it looks like Remick's about to get the best of Sammy, and then we see a stake go through him, right? And that's
Yeah, that's
so
smoke.
Smoke made it out and was able to save Sammy, and at this time the sun's also starting to rise, right?
Yeah, it's
And
right as it rises after he hits him in the head with the guitar.
yeah, so here comes the dawn, and everybody, all the other vamps that have been turned, they start, burning up, turning to dust and whatnot. And Remick, as we discussed earlier in this discussion, he goes up in a tornado of fire, basically. Now, this is where I thought the movie was going to pretty much end, right? And he sends them back. Uh, we see kind of this is a movie where they start the movie at the end and then do a flashback of the previous day. And so we get back to where Sammy's walking into his father's church, all beaten, slashed up, all this type of stuff, right? And we didn't really know what was going on with Smoke. So I kind of thought that's where it was going to end. However, it did not. And this is where it came full circle and I loved, right? So Smoke is still there at the barn, or sorry, at the sawmill. And he, in their truck and everything, had a bunch of weaponry, a bunch of guns and stuff, which they had made reference to actually prior, whenever they were going to have to fight the vampires, because it was outside, so they weren't really going to be able to get to it. Or it was whenever I think the KKK members they thought might have been there, or the white folk. Anyway, has a bunch of guns. And if you recall, obviously this was supposed to be the killing floor where the KKK was going to come back and, kill all of them. And so he's lying in wait, and it was just a great scene, right, where Smoke takes them all out.
Takes them all out. And he
Yeah.
catches a bullet that I honestly think they should have placed a little bit better to make it actually look like a
Is
fatal
that
wound.
supposed to be what killed him?
That, I mean, that's my
And do we
that's
even
my
know that
get.
he died that day? Was that
Well, that's the
confirmed?
implication. Remember, because when he asked the Hogwood for if
You
he's
got a
got a
cigarette?
cigarette,
Yeah.
yeah, he tells him "F you," and then he goes to load the Tommy gun back up. He takes it out of his pocket, hands it to him. He sits down, doesn't say anything. He lights the cigarette. Well, that's when he sees Beatrice in a white dress with a baby at her breast,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's implicating to me that showing that he's crossing over that veil that we know quite literally exists between the real world and the spirit world, and nobody's singing. So the only way that he's able to see beyond that veil to where we know Beatrice and their child has to be is because he's going there, So, but then I loved when the dude starts, he goes to get the baby, in his vision, this crossing over moment for him, and Hogwood opens his mouth about how he's got money and he'll pay him, and he just absolutely unloads the Tommy gun on him in just a
Yeah.
shut the fuck up moment. I'm speaking to my family, and that was really cool for me. I liked it.
Well, and that was
I
another
like
little
that
great
scene quite a bit.
homage. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just saying I really like that scene as well, because Smoke had finally found his peace,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh, go ahead, Dad. Good. My bad.
he was, rejoining Beatrice and his daughter, and yeah, and then Dummy interrupts it, and yeah, I like that scene.
Reminds me of
Anyway,
that scene from Mobland with Kevin and his abuser
yeah,
at the
yeah.
table. Yeah.
Something I wanted to point out that I spoke about at the very beginning that I really liked about the dynamic between the brothers, and I brought up the rolling of the cigarette. At the beginning, when they're waiting for Hogwood, Stack rolls up the cigarette, lights it, and hands it to his brother. And then they bust down the cigarette. If you remember, after the shootout goes down, Stack or Smoke goes to roll a cigarette and he can't do it. And you can tell, you can see, like everybody, you would think it's, oh, he must be nervous, he's
That's
shaky, the
he's
adrenaline.
shaking.
It's
Yeah.
not that his hands are shaking. If you look and notice, he's calm. Smoke just can't roll a damn cigarette. And to me, he gets so frustrated and he throws it down. And that to me it was very poignant for me because it just spoke to that bond, that brotherly bond that he's like, Smoke doesn't exist without his brother. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? That like they were quite literally inseparable. That was his other half. And without him, he's not whole. And, so that was just really because it brought, you talk about the things that come full circle, and that's quite literally how we're introduced to the brothers, and
Well,
they
yeah.
talk about the things throughout the movies like watch out for him, Sammy. This dummy can't watch his own ass, and then Stack tells Sammy, you got to da 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 da. He doesn't know how to lighten up. So, they quite literally are kind of 50-50 of one another, and they both struggle without the other. And I think that the cigarette scene brought it full circle to say, like, without his brother, he can't exist. And luckily, he passed over, given I think that was a better closure for the movie.
Well, that's where it was one of my favorite scenes there, that ending, just because I just the detestable nature of the KKK and stuff, and I was really hoping to see that and everything, even though it
Word.
wasn't like a huge plot line of the film, but it was nice to see that there was again
Yeah, it came
closure
around.
on that. It's like, yeah, thank you. I'm glad that we killed him. And also, again, the accuracy. I loved that he had that Thompson submachine gun, right? The
Yeah.
Tommy gun.
And he came out with the bar. He came out with that. He started with the bar, the
Was that
30
a bar or
06.
was that a Vickers?
That was a bar. That was a Browning assault rifle, 30-06 fully
Yeah.
automatic, the Bonnie and Clyde gun, baby.
Well, that's what all of it kind of touched on, right? The military aspect, because he
Oh
also had some
no, I'm
grenades and
sorry,
stuff.
Dad. You're right. It would have been a Vickers. The Browning, I don't think was developed yet. I'll have to look into that.
I'm
I'm sorry.
talking about the machine gun that he came out with.
Yeah, the
I
first.
thought that was a Vickers.
Mad Max.
Uh,
Well, the one with the Tommy
the
gun.
first one was it the first gun that he started sniping with? I don't think was a machine gun, was it? I thought that was a semi-auto.
I'm talking about the big machine gun that came out of the trunk. I'm not talking about the Tommy gun that he
Oh,
used.
yeah, I don't think he ended
Another
up
set.
using that one, right?
Yeah, he did when he took on the KKK guys.
No, no, no.
He went through two or three guns because
Well,
Yeah.
in any
he
case, what
pulled.
it go ahead.
I was just going to say he pulled that Tommy gun out of something that he had it hidden in the
It
ground.
was in the ground, yeah. Well, again,
And
it was just nice. It was a bit of an homage, right? Both it was you had some military weaponry, right? With
Yeah.
the first couple of
Which
guns I
of
think he
course they
had.
had.
You switch over to that Tommy gun, which is again kind of that mob style type thing, and again, kind of like that would have been very popular at the time and all of that. He also, I think, threw a grenade in one of the trucks, and I don't know. There was just everything about it. I really enjoyed that. Now, so that ends the movie, and I typically I would never have expected there to be an end credit scene in this movie, and I typically turn it off. However, I happened to just so happen to let this one play out because I was enjoying the music that was being played and
Yeah, you gotta
everything.
let it play out.
Yeah, and we see that it's supposed to be Sammy as an older person in what 1990, I believe it was 1996 maybe,
Not
and
1992 is exactly 60 years later, and that's Buddy Guy, by the way, that plays the
okay.
old Sammy.
1992. He's got the scars. Anyway, it's supposed to be old Sammy, right? And yeah, I was just letting it play because I was enjoying the music and was pleasantly surprised that there was that end credit scene, right? And that's where we're introduced that Mary and Stack are actually alive. They are vampires, but they are alive. And Stack, Smoke had allowed Stack to live. He had made him promise to leave Sammy alone.
The one condition was to let Sammy live out his life.
Yeah, which
And
yeah,
then
that
Sammy
was.
says, as they're getting ready, well, the scene that brings it full circle regarding what you talked about, regarding what may, in my opinion, affirm what you took from the way that the spiritual scene ended so abruptly, as far as the veil,
Mm-hmm.
with the music, was he asked him if he still got the reel in him. He said, "All recordings from back then sound like shit." He's like,
Yeah.
"With this new stuff," he's like, "I don't like it." He's like, "You still got that reel in you?" And then he busts out an acoustic tune, plays it, and then it just they kind of went back. There's that moment where they go back, and as he's leaving out the door, "Love you, little Sammy," and he asks him, and he tells him, he says, "I wake up every night." He says the things he says. I don't want to ruin it for anybody, even though he's kind of already ruined the movie, but he says what he says and asks him, and I just thought it was really cool what he says. The fact that it kind of speaks to, without delving too deep, he says, of course it was the best night of my life. It was the last time I saw my brother. It was the last time I saw the sun. It was just all these things, and it kind of makes you wonder. It's like, yeah, he's still alive, but he's speaking to the fact that while he's still around, he's lonesome, and a lot of the things that he actually cared about are gone. So I think
Mm-hmm.
without Mary, Stack wouldn't exist. Without Stack, Mary wouldn't want to exist. And I think
Yeah.
that kind of speaks to, you have to have a companion. I think that's kind of one of the messages in it, that you need a companion on the road.
Yep. Well, I don't have anything else to really say about this movie. It was really enjoyable. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I highly recommend folks watch it. I'm going to be watching it again at least once again, probably a couple times to be honest, because it's really good. Do you guys have any final thoughts before we end this?
Oh, for me, I'd just say I agree with your rating. I gave it like an 8.5, maybe even. Yeah, I'll stay at 8.5. I just it to me, it's an all around solid movie. I don't think I could give any movie a 10, but it's bordering on a 9 for me. It's just really, really well done. The dialogue, the characters, the wardrobe, the set pieces. Like you said, it's a film that does very little, or excuse me, a whole lot with very little in terms of what its sets are. And there's a few cinematic looks, the big cinematic photographic look at while they're driving down the road through the cotton fields, a couple things, but very simple, not super costly, but very everything just bore a lot of weight and was well put together, crafted together well. Cinematography, score, soundtrack. just across the board, I think it's a really great movie, and I love the fact that if you don't know what you're coming into, you get thrown for an absolute loop at that, end act one.
Yeah.
And, so for me, it's an 8.5 easily. I wouldn't argue if you gave it a 9, and I think it's a great movie that people should go check out.
All right. Yeah, go check that out, guys. And if you enjoyed this review, please check out our review on Mickey 17 and also The Electric State. Until next time, take care.